What it is, what is up? It's a rep, aka Yudi here. And if you're here, you already know what I'm about to get into. These are the 10 books that defined my reading year. So get comfortable, grab a drink, and let's get into it. Okay, so just to clarify, these aren't necessarily my favorite reads of this year, but definitely these left me maybe feeling challenged or maybe define the type of reading that I did for the year, or maybe they were one of the ones that really disappointed me this year. This just covers the gamut. That if you want to just get a quick overview of how my reading year went, these 10 books define them. Let's get into it because I have quite a bit of commentary. The first book I have is The Wilderness by Angela Flournoy. And this one follows 4 friends who are millennials over the span of 20 years. So their lives within their friend group as well as individuals. This book is being put in the top 10 of books that defined my year. Because one, it's a book that surprised me. I think it spoke to a place that I am in my own personal life. If I had to put it in just simple terms, I felt seen. I felt very seen in this book and the friendship and the personal trials and tribulations that each character went through. This book really defined what 2025 and the space and place I'm in at this moment, how I'm feeling, how I'm navigating relationships. I think this book just kind of captured this. It just captured this in this book. Moving to the side. Okay. The next book I have is a classic. It is The Street by Ann Petrie. I finally read it this year, and Ludi Johnson lives rent-free in my mind. Okay, so Ludi Johnson, she lives in Harlem with her son, and she's pretty much just going through it. Like, she's trying to find work. She just got her own place. Her and her husband are not together, and he's kind of moved on. He pretty much like kicked her out. But yeah, she just really wants a better life for herself, and she's really struggling with the cards that life has dealt her versus the life that she aspires to have. And this one, the story sticks with you. The character sticks with you. I understand why everybody is like, you must read this book. And I understand why this is the first black woman to sell like 1 million copies of her book. This is such a timeless read. So I think this not only defined my year as a reader, but just period. Like, this is going into one of the all-time best book. If you're asking me for a recommendation, like, I still need to get a physical copy of this book. Tell me if you guys do the same thing. Either I'll go into the store and like the bookstore and pick up all the books that I've been saying that I want to buy, but I haven't bought yet, or I'll keep like a running cart in like bookshop.org or Amazon, depending on books that I want to get. Because, you know, some, especially for indie authors, sometimes you can only get it on Amazon. So to make it worthwhile, I'll just, you know, create a little cart of books that I'm going to get, and then I'll just order them all at one time. But it's in that cart. So this is Jamaica Road by Lisa Smith. And this is one of the books that I read earlier in the year, and also a new release that came out this year. I think this is Lisa Smith's debut novel. And the way that the relationship between the two main characters, Daphne and Connie, had me in a chokehold. I think this is considered maybe a romance, even though the love story between Daphne and Connie is, to me, a little bit tragic, and I was rooting for them, but there was just a lot going on, and I don't know if they really got a really like tied in a bow happily ever after. But you know what? One thing that I do love endings that aren't tied neatly in a bow. So maybe that's why this book has stuck with me the way it has. I guess this is considered historical. But this is based in, I think, the 70s or 80s. 70s, I think, into the 80s. Maybe 70s into the 90s. Connie moves from Jamaica to South London to finally live with his mother, who has been living and working in the UK for a couple of years now and can finally afford to like bring her son so they can live together. There's a theme of like immigration, especially immigration within the UK. There's the story of Connie moving to the UK and becoming acclimated to this new space and place that he lives in. There's a story of family and family dynamics. Daphne is going through her own struggles with her family and specifically her father and the absence of her father. And then Connie is going through the struggles of his mother since being in the UK, has entered a relationship with a man who is abusive to her. Pretty much his own struggles with the relationship with his mother and the relationship that his mother has with this man. Is it newfound family, but the family that they find in each other, the friendship that they find in each other, and the solace they find in each other as they're coming of age. I think that this relationship and these characters are ones that will live rent-free in my mind. I don't think this was particularly one of my favorite reads, but I think because of the timing that I've read it and the climate that we're in right now, I've had this book for a while and I just decided to read it this year. And that is Bling. You can tell it's faded. It's Bling by Erica Kennedy. I don't even think this book is in print anymore. But Bling by Erica Kennedy is about, I cannot remember the main character's name, is about this girl who wants to be a singer. And she is in this girl group and the other girls in the group aren't serious. So the exec of the record company that she's trying to get signed to is you're a star, but you gotta leave them other girls alone. And pretty much she does it because she wants to be a star, but then she ends up in a relationship with the head of this record label, and we see how she changes in this relationship and with the fame. And then we also meet the other characters of this record label, and pretty much it's a satire. Yeah, it's a satire of the hip hop industry. And for background, so Erica Kennedy has since, I think she passed away in 2012, but she was very close to Kimora Simmons, who was married to Russell Simmons. So a lot of people, when this book came out, was this is about Russell Simmons and pretty much Def Jam. One, I decided to finally read this book because of everything that has been going on with Diddy. But when I bought this book, there was nothing happening with Diddy at the time. Reading this book and also thinking about this book now, with the documentary and everything going on, this defined my reading year. One, because there was, if you go back and look at the reviews of this book, I don't think they're that great. But it's interesting now, since having seen, clips of Diddy in the documentary. There's so many scenes I'm all this is a scene from this book. Also, everything that we know about Russell Simmons, but particularly if you've seen the Diddy doc, when he's working on his last album, he's the head of the record label in this book is in his 50s, or he's middle age. And at this point, Love, the last album Diddy worked on, Diddy's 50 now. He's dealing with his weight and the insecurities of that. When he's recording, he was I can hear how much weight I've gained. And in the clips, we see him running on the treadmill. And there's also this obsession with weight and the main character's relationship with his weight and his aging and changing body within this book. Aside from, what we know about Cassie and Diddy, the relationship between the two main characters is very similar to the dynamics of Cassie and Diddy, the very younger, very older. But also, this is all very similar to Russell. And Russell, you can say a lot, is just from the basics of Kimora being much younger than Russell is. Only difference is that Kimora never really wanted to be a singer. Cassie wanted to be an artist. A lot of the things that happen in this book is pretty much happened within Diddy's life. So I think that says a lot about, while this is satire, it says a lot about the ecosystem that creates these characters and the roles that they end up falling into and playing within this system, this industry, what it takes for Diddy to be a Diddy, how a Cassie can become a Cassie. So it doesn't feel as novel when reading this book, because she's pretty much describing a system and characters and how these characters fall into these roles, if I'm making sense. It definitely made me look at Diddy as less novel and more of a systematic problem. Okay, this one I do not have, and I will never have. This is The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory. I own another book by Jasmine Guillory. I think it's Play play by the book. It was like a series of different authors did remakes to fairy tales. Jasmine Guillory, she did a remake of Beauty and the Beast. And I didn't really care for that one either. But woo, I really didn't like The Wedding Date. I really did not like The Wedding Date. And you know what's so crazy? I don't really read interracial romance that much. It's the way that the main characters like talked about each other, and the way, like, I first of all, I wasn't buying into their relationship, and the points that I guess were supposed to be endearing, or the points that they had like contention between one another, I thought there were very big issues. Like, there is a scene in the book where the main character works in politics, but she's talking about something related with like the youth in the arts. And the male main character, see, I should have wrote down characters' names, but the male main character gives an answer that was just all like, and it's the way that she brushed it off. Like, she brushed it off like this, like, I'm like, this is anti-Black. I said, hell, I don't like this answer at all. Like, how can you come back from that? Like, it wasn't even at the big, that argument wasn't even the big blowout. That wasn't even the big blowout. And I was just all like, Jasmine girl, I don't know if I can ever read the rest of these series. Or I finished the book, but it was like the spicy scenes was vanilla ice cream. No, this definitely was one of the most disappointing books I read this year. I think this is book number 6. It's a series, okay? The Octavia Butler Earthseed series, aka Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Talents. This year, I joined my first book club. It was BAM Books. The first books we read that started the whole book club was the Earthseed series. And there were just so many similarities between the series and the current state of the world that we lived in. So it was very, can I say, cathartic to read this book within community and discuss the themes that Octavia Butler presented to us within this book. And I know that when she wrote this book, it was really within reference to the Ronald Reagan era, but we're living in the 80s. So, but either way, yeah, these definitely define my 2026. And I think a lot of people read Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents this year. Book number 7. Queen of Exiles by Vanessa Riley. This is the book that represents my historical fiction reading journey of this year. I think I've read a lot, especially towards the end. You'll see my wrap up. I read a lot of historical fiction. I think this is the most historical of historical fictions that I read this year. One, I, again, was not familiar. Like, I knew the basics of the Haitian Revolution, but I don't think in detail, especially what happens after, I wasn't really well informed about. In this book, I love the perspective that this book gave in terms of discussing the Haitian Revolution from the perspective of the Queen. And I think it touched the good, the bad, the ugly of the monarchy. And I think it tackled or it presented some questions that I think as within the Black diaspora being self-determined, that especially in terms of nation statehood, that we still contend with today. I found this to be thought-provoking. So yeah, definitely a book that defined my 2025. This is a book that I was kind of disappointed with. I think if we had a category for books that I had high hopes for and left a little bit underwhelmed and disappointed, sorry, y'all, Sky Full of Elephants by Sewell Campbell falls into that category. I think it had so much promise. The idea of the book is one that it's like, sign me up. But the execution, I just wasn't particularly a fan of. I know I'm in the minority, but either way, what is the next one on my list? Next of Kin by Kia Abdullah. And not particularly because this was like one of my favorite reads of this year, but baby, I was on a thriller kick. And I think out of all the thrillers that I read, I think Next of Kin was my favorite. Next of Kin is about a family who the aunt picks up her nephew. yeah, her nephew from her brother-in-law's or her sister's home because he needs help getting him to daycare. He's busy. But anyway, she picks him up, puts him in the back of the car, gets sidetracked, and forgets about him in the car, and then he ends up passing away. So this book covers pretty much the aftermath of that. And you would think it's pretty cut and dry, like she left him in the car, she's guilty. But there was so much more to this family dynamic. And when I tell you it took me for a ride, it took me for a ride. And I read a couple of thrillers, and I think I want to go into next year reading even more thrillers. Mystery and thriller, especially when I was younger, that used to be like my favorite genre. And I just, as I got older, I kind of fell off. But yeah, if we had to define, I think this book defines a genre that I got back into and rediscovered. And finally, last but not least, we have The Conjure Man Dies by Rudolph Fisher. And this is a mystery, but this is a Harlem Renaissance classic. This book came out in 1932. This is the only book written by Rudolph Fisher because he ended up passing away. I really enjoyed reading a mystery that was written during the Harlem Renaissance. And Conjure Man pretty much is about a conjure man that ends up dead. And they're trying to figure out how he was murdered because he still was working and he had clients. And at one moment he was giving a service to someone, and then by the time he gets to the next client, he's dead. So they're trying to figure out what exactly happened. It is a very, I think it's a very classic whodunit, but it was just very cool reading a piece of work from that time. I think the bigger takeaway is that I want to go into 2026 reading more Black classics, and I definitely read more older works this year than I think I have in a while. And I've created a list of Black classics that I really want to tackle in 2026 or, in the foreseeable future. But all in all to say, this book defined my relationship with the Black classics this year. These 10 books cover the gamut of my reading habits of this year. Let me know some of the books that defined your 2025 that you would like to share in the comments. And of course, as always, we'll continue the discussion there. And until the next time, y'all, deuces.